Welcome, everyone, to Nedarim, 1 week at a time. Today is our fifth lesson, and today we're going to be reviewing Daf 29 through 35. So let's begin with Daf 29. Uh, we discussed last week a case where somebody sanctifies a branch of a tree till it is cut down. And here on Daf 29, the Gemara explains how could when you cut it down, all of a sudden it loses its sanctity. And the Gemara explains that the sanctity that it had is really its value, not itself. In Hebrew, we say kedushat haguf, which is the object itself has sanctity physically, as opposed to in Hebrew kedushat damim, which means monetary value. And here, the Gemara explains that monetary value can disappear on its own, and it's not the same thing as if it had physical sanctity, and therefore. That sanctity can disappear just by cutting it down. Right? So the Gemara gives different examples of like temporary sanctity, right? So let's say somebody says, and this goes to the last Masechet that we did, right? A man says to a woman, right, you should be mikudeshet, right? You should be, right, betrothed to me, but it's the same word. You should be betrothed to me today, but not tomorrow. There's no such thing, right? You can't, that's not something that you can turn on and turn off. Either it's there or it's not. What if someone sanctifies an animal for a sacrifice? Let's say in 30, for the next 30 days, it should be this kind of sacrifice. But if I don't bring it to the temple, it should be a different sacrifice afterwards. That seems to work, and it seems that it can be transferred, or the Gemara says, no, again, this is sanctifying the value and not necessarily sanctifying the animal itself. Right? Let's say a man gave a woman money and he says, right, you should be betrothed to me in 30 days. We actually said that that does work. Even if the money doesn't exist after those 30 days, it does work. Right? So some say, however, that within those 30 days, she can retract it, right? She can say, never mind, I don't want to do that. Or maybe not, right? Once she accepts the money, maybe it does work. And these are things we're going to see actually in Masachet Kiddushin, which talks about the actual betrothal and how it works and the mechanisms. Um, okay. Right. The last case on DAF 29, right? When a person says that he'll give something to God, right? It's as if you gave it, right? So here the Gemara explains what does it mean to sanctify something? It's as if you gave it to another person. Therefore, you can't take it back, meaning once you gave it, you gave it. Therefore, if you say you're going to give this animal as a sacrifice in 30 days, you cannot retract it within those 30 days. Once you sanctified it, that is it. Okay, Daf 30 continues and says, right, let's say a man gives a woman 2 coins, and he says, one is that you are betrothed to me today, and the other is for after I divorce you, right? Don't ask me why someone would say this, right? But let's say he wants to betroth her, he wants to divorce her, and then he wants to betroth her again. So the question is, does this work? And is it the same thing? The Gemara says, no, this is different, right? Because this is not the same as our branch case, because someone can redeem the branch, and that would work. So it's not the same case. And again, don't ask me why someone would say this. Okay, let's go to the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah is going to start a series of Mishnayot that are all similar. They're the same genre, just different examples of the same thing. We're going to have a list of cases where somebody makes a vow that seems to be meaning one thing, and we interpret it to mean either something else, or we want to understand what does it include, what does it exclude. Okay, so here we go. The Mishnah says, a person says, I won't have any benefit from people who are seafarers. So the Mishnah tells us, right, he can have benefit from people who live on the land, right? Because he said people who go out to sea. So people on the land, he can. But if he says, I will not have benefit from land dwellers, then he also can't have benefit from seafarers because, right, we know that even sailors, even if they live out at sea, they eventually come to the land, and therefore they would be included in land dwellers. And this is not like the Mishnah adds a line. This is not like those who go from Akko to Yafo, right? These are cities in Israel, right? Acre, right? Akko, Acre, right? Right? Akko till Jaffa, till Yafo. But this is talking about people who go long distances. The Gemara is going to explain what this means. So first of all, maybe that last line that we just mentioned, when we said what are seafarers, it doesn't mean someone who goes up and down the coast of Israel, rather someone who goes far on a journey, right? A sailor who goes far. And those are really seen as seafarers, right? Or maybe when it's saying that you cannot, right? Again, you can not have benefit from somebody who is a short, right? If you said land dwellers, so for people who are just go up and down the coast, those would be included. But someone who goes really far away, those would really be called sea dwellers, and they wouldn't be called land dwellers. Next Mishnah, a person says, I won't get benefit from sun seers, right? People who see the sun. So, right, presumably it's saying someone who can see. And interestingly, the Mishnah says this also includes blind people, because, right, maybe it means the people that the sun sees, right? That the sun sees all of these people, and therefore, and it doesn't mean those who can see the sun, which would exclude blind people. Who does it exclude then? The Gemara says it excludes fish, right, because they're under the water, and unborn children who have not seen, we would say, the light of day. Interesting. Next Mishnah. I will not get benefit from dark heads. What does that mean? Right, one would think maybe it means someone with dark hair. The Mishnah says no. It even includes bald people, people who don't have hair, people who have white hair. Who does it exclude? It excludes women and children because they are not called dark-headed. Again, this is, I guess, statement. I guess the way people spoke in the time of the Mishnah and the Gemara, right? Maybe because it didn't. The Gemara explains maybe because it didn't say people with dark hair. It says dark heads. And interestingly, the Gemara explains, right? Women always cover their hair, so their heads. So they would not be called dark heads, and children never cover their heads. So therefore, women and children would be excluded from this statement. Next Mishnah, I will not get benefit from people who were born. This would exclude those who haven't been born at the time of the statement. Or for those who will be born, right? That includes, even though you said will be born, the Mishnah says it actually includes everybody who was born already. Or another opinion in the Mishnah is no, It doesn't include, it doesn't go retroactive, it only goes forward. Um, right? Rabbi Meir says that each one excludes the other, meaning who were born is only to the past, who will be born is only to the future. Um, Again, this seems to exclude fish and birds, right? They hatch, they are not born. And therefore, right, if you say that it includes everybody who was and will be, then we have to find another group of uh, of right organisms or animals or living creatures that are not born, rather they hatch. Um, Next Mishnah on Daf 31, right? I will not get benefit from people who keep Shabbat. Okay, this I think is very interesting. What does it include, right? Who are people who keep Shabbat? It includes all Jews, even if they don't keep Shabbat, and it includes, and it also includes the Kutim. If you remember, the Kutim are a nation that lived in Israel and converted, and the Gemara in different places will explain that they kept some laws, but not all of the laws. So it seems that they did keep Shabbat. So therefore, they would be included. Um, I will not get benefit from people who eat garlic. It seems that this again includes Jews and Kutim. They ate garlic. The commentary says they ate that Jews ate garlic on Friday to increase virility for Friday night. Um, from people who go up to Jerusalem, this includes Jews, but not the Kutim. Apparently, they did not go to Jerusalem to the temple. Rather, only the Jews did. The Gemara explains, right? Again, this includes people who were commanded to keep Shabbat. Um, and not necessarily if people are Shabbat observant. However, non Jews, right, even if they rest on Shabbat, are not commanded to do so, and therefore they are not included in this vow. I think this is going to continue. I just want to say here just two things. One, I think that as we've seen previously and we'll continue to see, I think the Mishnah and the Gemara are trying to tell us that our words are very powerful, right? And they have a lot of meaning. Sometimes we will say, right, what did you mean? And other times we're going to assume what you meant. And it's interesting to think about, right, how the Mishnah and the Gemara interpret the things that we say, right? Whether it is societal norms, what are people called, as opposed to another group of people are called something else. Or we also saw this previously. We are going to try to take the broadest interpretation of our words. Because again, we want to be very careful that you do not transgress this commandment of keeping vows. So I think that's important to just keep in mind when we read all of these Mishnayot. On one hand, I don't want to say that they would seem silly, but they seem, right, either redundant or what, we question, why do we have to have all of these examples, or what are they trying to teach us? So I think there is something deeper here. Specifically, the last one that I mentioned and the following few, because I think that there's a statement about the Jewish people, right? If I say those who keep Shabbat, right, or right, then I think here it's saying really you mean all Jews, right? All Jews should be keeping Shabbat or were commanded to keep Shabbat. So I think that here we have a very unifying statement, and you'll see it continues to different, right, Jews and non-Jews. So the next Mishnah says, I will not benefit from the descendants of Noach. Okay, so here, interestingly, if you think about it, we are all descendants of Noach. Rather, The Mishnah says when you say descendants of Noach, Bnei Noach, it means non-Jews, because we already, right, the Gemara explains that we also are descended from Noach, but once Abraham came, we are known as the descendants of Abraham. And that's a different way of saying Jews. And descendants of Noach, it seems at that time and maybe now, are seen as, right, everybody else. Right? Everybody else came from Noach. We come from Abraham, right? We're called Bnei Abraham, right? So the next Mishnah says, I will not get benefit from the children of Abraham, right? This includes Jews. It excludes non-Jews, right? And here, it's interesting that the next question would be, what about Yishmael, right? Yishmael is a son of Abraham. So the Gemara explains when I say the children of Abraham, I also mean to say the children of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, meaning the Jewish people, and I don't mean to say the descendants of Yishmael or Esav. Those are already seen as other, meaning not part of the Jewish people, right? If you say, I won't benefit from Jews, that seems to be very clear, but now how are you going to make a living, right? So the Mishnah says you can do business with Jews, but, right, think about all of you with business heads, right? It means that you need to buy at high prices and you need to sell at low prices, right? What does that mean? I can do business, but I can't make a profit because you just said that you don't want to have benefit from Jews, right? What if you say, I vow that Jews won't benefit from me? That's the opposite. So now you need to do the opposite. He needs to buy low and sell high, right? But nobody's going to want to do business with him because that seems to be, right, not very good for business. Right? What if we say we can't benefit from each other? Now you can only do business with non-Jews because you cannot have benefit either way. So the Gemara explains to us, for those of us who are not good at business, right, if an item is in low demand, then the sale is going to be to the benefit of the seller, right? Because if a lot of people want the same thing, the seller can increase the price, right? And that seems to be according to the Mishnah. But a regular sale, meaning when you don't either hike up the prices or drop it too low, a regular sale is to the benefit of the buyer. Interestingly, the end of the Mishnah seems to be saying that when an item is in a high demand, so then the end of the Mishnah would be what we were talking about. So here, the Gemara continues that your responsibility to guard an item is directly related to your responsibility to pay for that item, right? Since we're talking about buying and selling, so the Gemara gives like a case of, let's say you pick something up in a store, right? You break it, you buy it, right? Even if I didn't pay for it yet, if I cause it to get lost or broken, so then I have a responsibility to pay for it. Okay, the next Mishnah on Daf 31 tells us, right, I vow I do not want to have any benefit from someone who is uncircumcised. Again, interestingly, here we're going to take a very broad view. What does this mean, uncircumcised? It means a non-Jew, and it excludes a Jew. And here the Mishnah says, even if the Jew couldn't get circumcised or isn't circumcised, he is not included in that vow, and vice versa, right? A non-Jew who is circumcised is included in this vow. Meaning, again, when you said, I don't want to get benefit from someone who is uncircumcised, the Mishnah is interpreting this as saying from a non-Jew. We're not really focusing on the technicalities of did the person have a circumcision or not, rather what group of people this person is connected to. And since we're discussing Brit Milah, right, circumcision, the Mishnah tells us that a Brit Milah is so great, and it gives a whole list of reasons why it is so great, right? It has the word covenant, Brit, is mentioned 13 times in the verses talking about doing a Brit Milah. Not only that, but to do a circumcision, right? We learned in Masechet Shabbat that it actually overrides the laws of Shabbat. And therefore, right, you can do a Brit Milah on Shabbat. Also, we saw that you cannot delay it, right? That goes together with Shabbat. But also, if you remember, Moshe, right, when he leaves to go to Egypt with his two sons and his wife Tzipporah, he gets into trouble because he didn't give his son a Brit Milah, right? And the Mishnah, the Gemara is going to talk more about this story. And basically, we saw that Moshe is actually punished for delaying Brit Milah. It also overrides Tzarat, right, which is leprosy, which means there is a law. I don't think we've learned it before, but when we talk about Tzarat, again, biblical leprosy, not modern day leprosy, but biblical leprosy is a physical manifestation of a spiritual ailment, and the Torah tells us that you're not allowed to cut off a lesion, right? You have to wait till it goes away, and then you can come back into the camp. But what happens? The Gemara asks, what happens if one of those lesions is on the foreskin? Right? Do you do Brit Milah or not? The answer is yes. You do Brit Milah. It overrides the commandment to not remove a lesion of tzarat, of leprosy. Let's keep going. Why is Brit Milah so great? Avraham was called complete, tamim. Here, tamim, like tam, is not naive or innocent, like we say at Seder night with the four sons, tam. But here, tamim means whole, complete, right? Avram is only called complete after doing Brit Milah. And the last thing the Mishnah tells us is that God created the world so that the Jewish people can do Brit Milah, which sounds very fantastical. So the Gemara is going to explain all of these things. So let's go to the story of Moshe. Right? The Gemara tells us that God wanted to kill Moshe because he delayed Brit Milah for his son. We know that you need to give a Brit Milah on the 8th day, and the Gemara explains why didn't he give it right away. Moshe knew that they needed to go to the desert, and he didn't want to what's the word? He was afraid for his son. He didn't want him to become ill or to get infected. He knew it was dangerous to circumcise him and then to take him on this journey. And therefore, he delayed doing the Brit Milah at that point. At this point on Daf 32, the Gemara tells us this story that two angels, they were called Af and Chema, which basically means like anger and fury. And these two angels came and they tried to swallow him up. There's a discussion: who did they try to swallow up? Was it Moshe as a punishment, and therefore he couldn't do the Brit Milah? Was it the child, the baby, so that only the area of the Brit Milah was exposed, and that's how Tzipporah was the one who was able to do Brit Milah, right? So it's important to recognize Moshe did not do it. His wife Tzipporah did it. And afterwards, right, so Tzipporah does the Brit Milah on her son. She saves him. And then Moshe wanted to kill these two angels. Some say he was successful at killing Chema, but not Af. and that seems to be like a very interesting story about angels. Next, right, we said the greatness of Brit Milah, that Abraham was only called complete after he did Brit Milah. And since we're talking about Brit Milah, the Gemara tells us that Brit Milah corresponds to all 613 commandments, right? That's how great it is. And since we're talking about Abraham, so the Gemara is going to keep talking about Abraham. It says that God took Abraham outside, right, to show him the stars. So the Gemara explains that Abraham was looking at his stars, right, and saw that he would only have one son. And God said, right, go out of, right, stop looking at your stars because, right, a line that we actually learned in the beginning, probably about 2.5 years ago. What was the line? Ein mazal li Yisrael, right? There is no mazal is right either superstition or astrology, but these things do not control Jews, right? Rather, he took him out of his astrology, right? And God said, "Don't worry, I'll plan for you, and it'll all be okay," right? So the Gemara says, right, with the righteous, God is righteous, right? And but the opposite is also true, right? If you pay attention or take astrology and these signs and superstitions, if you take them seriously, then, says the Gemara, they're going to work for you. Meaning, if you read, your horoscope and you think that these bad things might happen to you, the Gemara seems to say they might happen to you, right? And if you don't believe in them, then you won't, right? And if you don't believe in them, the Gemara tells us that you have a special place in heaven where even the angels cannot touch you, right? So it seems to, again, don't forget, in the time of definitely of the Tanakh, but even in the Mishnah and the Gemara, superstitions are very powerful, very popular. So I think here the Gemara is trying to say, don't give them credit. Since we're talking about Abraham, the Gemara continues that Abraham was actually punished because he used Torah scholars to fight against the 4 kings, right? It says that he took the people to come and fight with him, and it seems that he should have let them either continue learning Torah, or he should have had enough faith that he would have known that he could do it on his own. But because of this, the Jewish people were sent to Egypt, and that's why they had to be enslaved in Egypt, says the Gemara. Or maybe it was because Abraham didn't have enough faith in God. What does that mean? Right? Because Abraham says to God, how can I know for sure that I will have a child or that I will have a descendant? And that seems to be questioning God. And the Gemara seems to be critical of that here. But it is interesting because later on, Abraham challenges God, and it seems to be a very productive conversation. So that seems to be very interesting. Or maybe the third reason why, again, the Jewish people were sent to Egypt as a punishment to Abraham was because he didn't save the people after that war with the 4 and the 5 kings. So the king of Sodom says, here you can take the people. And Abraham says, no, I don't want to take the people. And here again, it seems that the Gemara is critical of Abraham for not wanting to save more souls, right? More people. Okay, right? So the Gemara says that Abraham took 318 people with him to war, or maybe he only took Eliezer, right? Because the numerical value, right, which we say gematria, that's the numerical value of every letter. So the numerical value of Eliezer, who is the servant of Abraham, is 318. So either he took 318 people plus Eliezer, or he just took Eliezer, which was like taking 318 people. From here, from going critical, we're going to be positive of Abraham. The Gemara tells us that Abraham was 3 years old when he recognized God. This is, again, taking numerical value of the word, right? It says, Abraham says, Ekev asher shama bekoli. The word ekev means, right, till or for as long as, right? So if you do the numerical value of the word ekev, ayin, kuf, bet, it comes out to 172 years, right? For 172 years, he knew God, but he died when he was 175. Therefore, he must have discovered God when he was 3 years old. More numerical values. The numerical value of the word Hasatan, right? The Satan is 364. What does this mean? That the Satan has power over us for 364 days of the year, but one day, Yom Kippur, he does not have any power over us. And the idea, right? Abraham, again, more numerical values. Abraham was given, right? His name was changed from Avram to Avraham, right? A hey was added. The Gemara says, what is this hey? Hey in numerical, right, is 5 in numerical value. What's 5? Abraham got power over 5 of his limbs that in general a person cannot control, right? Your eyes, right? We can't always control what we see. Right? I mean, we could close our eyes, but when we're walking down the street, that's very difficult, right? Our eyes, our ears, right? We can't always control what we hear. So that's 2, 4, plus the male organ, which again is hard to control, and therefore when his name was changed to Avraham, he now had control over those 5 limbs. The end of the chapter gives us I would say, a homiletic explanation of a verse in Kohelet, in Ecclesiastes. The verse says there was a small, right, there once was a small city with few people, and a great king came and he laid siege. What does this mean? The Gemara says, what is the small city? It's our body. And it only has a few limbs, right? We have a limited amount of, it only has a few people. Those are the limbs of the body. And what's this great king who laid siege on the city? It's the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination that causes us to sin, right? That's the siege, like it confines us. But then the verse continues, but in the city there was a wise man. This is the Yetzer Hatov, right? The good influence, right? That voice that tells us to do the good things. And he filled the city with his wisdom, right? Right, we end up doing good deeds. But in the end, no one remembered this wise man, right? And what is the Gemara telling us, right? That when we do good, right, we do good. But after we stop doing good, we usually forget about doing good, right? The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is so powerful that we usually end up forgetting about the good side of right, the good deeds that we could do, right? The evil inclination is so enticing. The last thing of the chapter, right? Priesthood was going to go from the line of Shem, right? Melchizedek, who Abraham meets, is either a descendant or is actually Shem, and he was a priest. However, because he praises Abraham before he praises God, the priesthood is taken from Shem and is given to Abraham, right? Which is why, right, the Jewish people have the concept of priesthood, again, as a nation from God. That is the end of the 3rd chapter. Next Mishnah. The Mishnah tells us, there's no difference between someone who makes a vow against food related benefit from his friend versus not having any benefit, right? What would be the difference? One is walking through the person's property, right? That is obviously not food related. And you can borrow non food related vessels, right? And we'll see what this is in a minute. Um, if you can't eat from a friend, then you can't borrow food related vessels, but you can borrow clothing, jewelry, things that do not have to do with food. And from here, there is a concept that is taught at the bottom of 32. The concept of, in Hebrew, it's called vitur, actually in modern Hebrew as well. I mean, in modern Hebrew, it means I give up of something, but vitur here means like a gratuity, right? So let's say you go to a store and you buy some nuts, right? You say, I want a pound of nuts. Usually, right, they might give you a little bit more, right? Free of charge, right? They'll put a little bit more, or baker's dozen, right? You get 13 instead of 12. Um, so here, it seems to be that this is considered benefit, even though there's no monetary benefit from it. Daf 33 tells us, again, benefit that is associated with food are, again, anything that has to do with food. So vessels, bags that you transport the food, animals that transport the food, right? Can you borrow someone's car to go to a restaurant? Right? It's food related, right? But can you walk through someone's property to get to the restaurant? These seem to be yes, because they are more distant from actual food. Okay, next Mishnah on Daf 33, something that isn't involved with food. If it's normally rented out, so then you can't borrow it because you are saving money that you could have used for food. Again, right? Again, you said I won't eat from you. That could also mean I'm not going to get monetary benefit from you because I'm saving money that I can then go and buy food with. The Gemara says, right, things that aren't rented out are also forbidden according to Rabbi Eliezer, right? Because there is a benefit given here. Okay, the next Mishnah says that if you vowed to not have benefit from someone, you can actually pay for their machatzit shekel. If you remember, what's machatzit shekel? The half a shekel tax that everyone gave once a year to the temple. So you can do this, meaning anything that is an obligation we're going to see, you can do for this person because they're not really getting benefit. There's a famous line that when we do mitzvot, when we do commandments, it's not to get benefit. It's not about me. It's about doing a commandment. Therefore, if I do a mitzvah for you, you aren't getting any benefit. And therefore, you can pay the machatzit shekel, you can pay his loan, and you can return an object to him. But if you live in a place that you pay someone, right, a compensation for returning an object, so then you can't keep the money. That's direct benefit. Rather, the money should go to the temple, to Hekdesh. Okay, the Gemara explains you can pay a loan. Well, how can you pay a loan? That seems to be benefit. So you can pay a loan because you're preventing loss, but that's not considered benefit. Or maybe we're only talking about a loan that doesn't have a due date. So if it doesn't have a due date, so then maybe we're saying, you're not really getting benefit if I pay back, for you. And here, the Gemara brings a case that we saw actually in Ketuvot, right? If someone supported someone else's wife when the husband was out of town, then he can't ask the husband to pay him back, right? This seems to be like a loan, right? You can't, is it a loan or not? And here it seems you cannot ask for the money back. Or there is opinion that you can, right? You swear to say how much you gave as expenses, and then you can get the money back. And here, the Gemara talks about, there's actually quite a lengthy discussion about when we're talking about returning an object, who who is not allowed to get benefit from who? Not allowed, but who took the vow, right? Is it the person who is the returner, or the person whose object it belongs to? And there are two ways to understand it, right? Let's say Reuven found Shimon's item, and Reuven's things are forbidden to Shimon. So then Reuven can return it to Shimon because it's Shimon's item. It's not Reuven's item, right? He's not giving him anything new. But if Shimon's property is forbidden to Reuven, so then he can't return it, because when he's involved in returning this item, so now he doesn't have to give um, charity. What does this mean? Another fundamental principle is that if I'm involved in one mitzvah, one commandment, I do not have to stop and do another commandment, another mitzvah. So if I'm in the middle of returning an item to you, I do not have to stop to give tzedakah. The fact that I don't have to stop to give charity means that I just saved money, which means I just benefited. So now that's a problem. Or really, it's okay, because how often is it going to be that someone's going to ask me for charity exactly in the moment that I'm coming to return your item? Daf 34 tries to explain it actually in the completely opposite way, and says really it's the opposite case that would be forbidden and the opposite case that would be permitted. Next case. If a person finds a loaf of bread and sanctifies it, right, makes it hekdesh, and then he picks it up to eat it, he has done mi'ilah, right? What is mi'ilah? Mi'ilah is when somebody misappropriates uh, property that is meant, excuse me, property that is meant for God, meaning for the temple, right? So you could say stealing from God. If you do this, you need to pay back the value plus a fifth, plus bring a sacrifice. So if you do this, right, again, if you sanctify this loaf of bread and then you eat it, so now you did mi'ilah, you need to pay back. And you have to pay back the full value, even though you just picked it up. But, right, let's say he only bequeaths it to his children, right? He doesn't use it. Then he only pays for mi'ilah, for the value of the benefit of the gratitude from his children, meaning they haven't done anything yet. He hasn't done anything yet. But the fact that his children are so happy that it is written in their will, in his will, so then that gratitude has monetary value, and that's what he has to pay for. Next, right? My loaf of bread is forbidden to you, right? And then I give it to you as a gift, right? So now, can you eat it? Right? One opinion is yes, you didn't know that it's forbidden. You gave it to me, so you can eat it. Or no, right? You cannot, right? It's still forbidden, right? As long as you, even if I gave it to you as a gift, it's still forbidden to you. Okay. Oh, and the Gemara adds at the bottom of 34, even if I invite you over to my house and I serve the bread, you still can't eat it. Daf 35 tells us, right, what's our case? Right, let's say somebody says, right, your neighbor knocks on the door and says, can I borrow your cow? And you say, no, I'm so sorry. I only have one cow. Again, don't forget, the cow is the tractor, right? My cow is out in the field plowing my property. So I cannot lend it to you because my cow is busy. And, right, I'm so serious, like I feel so bad. So I say, right, that if I own another cow, all of my property should be forbidden to you. That's how serious I am. But let's say you find out that he does own another cow, right? So then his possessions are forbidden to you, right? My possessions are forbidden to you unless that person dies or he gives it to him as a gift. Um, so here it seems to say that if right one person gives another person a gift, it takes it out of this concept of being um, forbidden to him, right? Once you give it as a gift, it is no longer forbidden. Or the Gemara adds, maybe it is that it was given as a gift through a third party. And therefore, if you give it through a third party, then it is okay. If you remember in the beginning of the Masechet, we explained that when I say, if a person says, this object should be konam, right? Konam is a language of a vow, but it's also the language of korban, which means sacrifice, right? So when you said konam, did you mean to sanctify it like a sacrifice or not? And if you did, right now, if somebody uses it, are they transgressing the case of mi'ilah, what we said before, right? Something that is forbidden through a konam, right? Is it prohibited if I, let's say, use it, even accidentally? You still have transgressed mi'ilah, meaning you have stolen from God. It's important to recognize that mi'ilah is only accidental. If you do it on purpose, you do not pay back the value. One might say your punishment will be more severe. We just don't know what the punishment is. But you do not pay it back if it is on purpose, right? And here the Gemara says that it is actually a dispute if it is sanctified or not. The sages say it's not. You do not have mi'ilah, even if you use the word konam. Okay, the next Mishnah tells us if one is prohibited from benefit from another person, that, right, the original person can separate truma and maaser, meaning the tithes and the gifts to the priest. And again, as we said, this is a commandment, and therefore it's not a benefit. Only if the person knows that you're doing it, right, with his knowledge. And you can bring an obligatory sacrifice for that person, right, him or her. And you can teach, again, him or her, you can teach them halacha, right, the laws and midrash and practical laws, but you're not allowed to teach Torah, right? And the Gemara is going to explain this, but you can teach the person's children Torah. So the Gemara explains a little bit. Well, actually, the Gemara, we're only going to do that next week. First, the Gemara talks about this idea of priests, right, the Kohanim in the temple. Are they seen as our messengers to God, right? Or are they God's messengers to us, right? Who, I don't want to say whose side are the Kohanim on, but like, who do they work for, right? Do they work for us or do they work for God? And here the Gemara goes back and forth trying to prove one way or another. And it seems that our Mishnah implies that they work for God, right? They're agents of God, because it seems that, right, because they can bring a sacrifice for you. So it seems that they're not getting any benefit from. But if the Mishnah, right, but the Mishnah didn't mention all sacrifices, only specific sacrifices. And therefore, the Mishnah seems to conclude that the Kohanim are actually agents of ours, and therefore there is some sort of benefit here in the Beit HaMikdash, and we will see the ramifications of this next week. So first of all, wishing everyone a wonderful week. There are going to be a few changes in the upcoming weeks. So first of all, stay tuned to emails. I will be sending out an email to tell you exactly when classes will be. But the big change is we're not going to have class next week. I'm actually going to be traveling, and I couldn't find time to do the class, but we can't miss any classes. So therefore, I'm going to try to prepare as much as I can for the next week's daf, and I'm actually going to be giving the class this Friday at 2 p.m. Israel time. I know it is a crazy time, but it is the only time that I could find. So don't, again, anybody who can join, great. But if you cannot join, it is totally fine. The class will be recorded and it will be uploaded, so you can see it. If anybody does have questions or comments, feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I just couldn't find any other time. So that means class will be on this Friday, but for next week. Next week, there will not be any classes. And then the following 2 weeks, the class is going to be on Wednesday night, regular time, but Wednesday night for 2 weeks after that. So you don't have to remember this. I'm going to send out emails. I apologize in advance if it does not work out with your schedules, but I'm just trying to, stay on top of this. As we know, Daf Yomi is rain or shine, and it's really kol hakavod to all of you for sticking through it week after week. So kol hakavod, everyone. Wishing everyone a wonderful week, and for those of you who can make it, see you on Friday. If not, see you in a week and a half, or 2 weeks actually. Have a great week, everyone.